Over the past 3 years, in two major countries, right-wing conservative parties, sometimes on the verge of radical, have come to power. I mean the United States of America with Trump, and in Italy, accordingly, with the coalition led by Meloni. And now, in three other major countries, Great Britain, France, and Germany, taking the lead, sometimes in the polls and sometimes in elections. Yes, like the municipal ones, these right-wing populist parties are emerging. And this is the thermometer I'd like you to take a look at. That is, in the five largest Western countries, yes, the population is starting to move towards a very, I'd say, almost radical position in their views, or at least in the way they vote.
Listen, Alexei Alexeyevich, we have an entertainment show here, I hope.
Yes, of course, we entertain, you entertain the viewers, yes.
Yes, the viewers don't expect from us. They say, not more dry analytics again. And if I were doing analytics, I would be the last and the worst analyst of all those in existence.
Right, right. The main thing is that he lashes himself, right? Yes, I'm telling the chat, he's, yes.
So I'll tell a story. I've developed a recent habit of sometimes mocking ChatGPT.
I see. I'm not acquainted with it yet.
Oh no, I just belong to that category that doesn't believe it, but I enjoy experimenting with it. I asked it a question the other day. Please consider a situation in the context of the war between Russia and Ukraine, where in three European countries simultaneously, representatives of these parties come to power. Vitals in Germany. Well, in France, it's not quite clear. There are like two. Well, if Le Pen is sidelined, there'll be another right-wing leader and Farage in Great Britain. So then it buzzes away for a bit. It says it's thinking longer than usual, 9 seconds. So I think it's going to be something outstanding since it's thinking longer than usual. It writes to me, I am not prepared to consider this as a realistic scenario, but it says, I'm ready to consider the situation as a stress test. I thought, wow, artificial or not, it behaves just like a natural one. It's dodging, as you say, you know? And then it says, well, yes, it says this would be such a terrifying scenario, of course, the hardest one. Everything would immediately become very bad and very much in Putin's favor. And in general, Putin would be terribly happy about all this. By the way, unlike it, I'm not sure that it would be exactly like that. But for myself, nevertheless, I realized that there are, as it were, three scenarios. They're very interesting to me. So right now, radicalization is happening in the world, an erosion of the center, and we see this kind of swelling of the two extremes. The radical left with its pro-Palestine stance, anti-Semitism, and generally all the focus on anti-fascist, as they say, themes. And the right with its focus, conversely, on the anti-migrant movement, on Putin versteers, on their own like national interests and so on. And like in the middle, it turns out there's nothing, there's a vacuum there. Next, we see a desynchronization of these processes in two such main camps of what we used to call the unified Western world. That is, we see that practically the first step was taken in America. I mean, the center definitely collapsed. It's already collapsed. And it immediately swung to this right side where Trump became the voice of this, let's say, new right-wing line. And accordingly, we immediately saw friction between America and Europe. And one could say that this friction, it's caused, of course, by some economic factors. But to be honest, on the surface, it looks exactly like friction. That's ideological. Because America swung sharply to the right, while Europe remained in moderate left positions. And so a great deal in this world will depend on how the movement proceeds from here. Will it be synchronized? So here's one scenario. That is, the main countries of Europe, that is, that trio which, well, essentially maintains the unity of the European space. A similar right-wing wave wins there, and America and Europe once again enter. Synchronous political sailing begins once again. That's one scenario. In this case, there will be a cumulative effect and there will be like an intensification. I mean, when two waves hit the same point, that is, there will be a very serious intensification. And I think there will be serious shifts toward just Europe's reassessment of the level of its involvement in the Russo-Ukrainian conflict. This doesn't mean all of Europe will reassess. It's just that a regrouping will occur there, and it will become more the business of those whom it concerns directly and immediately. That is, the countries of Northern Europe and the countries that directly feel the breath of the Russian bear on them. That is, yeah, Finland, Norway, Finland, the Baltic states, Poland. And the second scenario, it's quite original. Imagine a situation somewhat ridiculous, well, in quotes, of course, where this upheaval happens in Europe, but at the same time in America, there's a backlash and left-wing forces opposite to Trump win there. It turns out to be another ideological kind of conflict, but in the completely opposite direction, where in America we already have democratic socialists with their whole program, and in Europe it's Farage forever. Then this situation will be in a completely different direction. It will be just as fun, but the other way around. And finally, the third situation, where in general, in both places, I would say a kind of gradual cooling down occurs. That is, some moderate forces still win, which I would very much like to hope for. They regroup and still don't repeat the 20th century scenario when the struggle between Nazism and communism determined essentially the configuration in Europe. And in America, the same thing happens that happens with any virus as it spreads. That is, it becomes more normal, less aggressive. Well, like COVID is there with us, and it is. That is, relatively speaking, Trumpism remains, but its face becomes, for example, Rubio. Well, like it seems like everything is already almost like normality. These three scenarios, I'm not the Lord God to say which one it will be, but they need to be watched very closely because they will largely determine the atmosphere, the sound, the music of this geopolitical process.